I would just be putting out fires all day. There was no management here, and I was successful in spite of myself. I don't think we could spell vision when we started. I just wanted to survive.
Welcome to a special edition episode of the Game Changing Attorney Podcast, featuring conversations with 4 law firms who have completely transformed their practices by building systems, processes, and people behind the scenes that help their firms excel.
I've taken a lot of these lessons over the last 3 or 4 years now and added them into my repertoire. It just made me a stronger person. I fire people now. We had performance reviews last month, which we didn't used to do. So, we're actually running much more of a business-like organization.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of CRISP, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. CRISP started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. Today, we're diving into the not-so-flashy side of building a law firm, the systems and operations that create a foundation you can truly scale from. Getting that right means you serve your clients better, make a greater impact, and build a business that doesn't require you in every decision. We're joined by 4 firms who have moved beyond the traditional practice of law to build high-performing organizations.
It's all about leading people and coming alongside them and finding where their passion lies, because if they're able to trust their leader and know that you're going to come alongside them and you're able to build that respect and they can see where they're going and where you're going as a company, they're going to follow.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. To kick off this episode, we're joined by Steven Groth, founder of Groth & Associates in Toledo, Ohio. Steven has transformed his practice from what he once called a frat house into a highly structured, impact-driven firm that prioritizes both business excellence and community involvement. I kicked off the conversation by asking Steven what led him to start his firm.
I think I've always been a helper of people. When I was younger and in college and whatnot, I think I was always willing to jump in to help folks. And then as I was getting through my education, I started in sports management and business and was working my way through sort of athletics and academia. The law kind of came to me and it seemed like a natural fit. And then once I got involved in that, it's been great ever since. I don't think I woke up necessarily one morning and said, I'm going to be the world's greatest attorney, but I'm going to be the best guy I can be. And the law really was my avenue for that. It's given me tremendous opportunities. It's taken me places. It's gotten me on national television. But I'm not really an accolades guy. It's just given me this wonderful opportunity to live my best life. Like yourself, my parents were immigrants. I was born in an apartment in California. So, that's like +2 because it's California. Modest background, always worked hard, probably worked since I was, 14 years old, always a bit of a hustler, and just found my way into the law, and the law kind of found me.
I believe you said before that I think it was like Clarence Darrow's defense, like that had really lit a fire under you. Like what really compelled you to want to, more specifically, kind of fight for the people, right? On the criminal side, then later the PI side as well.
I've always connected with the underdog. I think I've always felt sort of a bit of an outsider, very fortunate, be treated, well, I think, by the world in many respects. But I remember very specifically, like photographic memory, I'm in the USC library for doctorate in education. And I'm reading the Scopes Monkey trial Clarence Darrow case, which he lost. Most people don't even realize he actually lost. But that fight and the fact that he was willing to take on the powers that be, I was like, wow, that's really something. That's meaningful in life. I'm not a a boat guy, a house guy, a car guy. I have a couple watches. I'm not even really a major watch guy. Although I look like Mr. Wonderful, maybe I should have two watches, one on each wrist. I don't know. But in any event, so yeah, there's nothing greater, and it's fed into, and I hope I'm sure we'll talk about, when we were honored with CRISP's award for community service, that feeds right into it, because when you're helping people and you're doing that sort of thing, there's nothing more rewarding.
So take me back 20 plus years ago to, I believe it was around 2001. You leave the prosecutor's office. You don't really have a safety net. You've got limited resources. What's going through your head? Like, what led to deciding to go out on your own and start the firm?
I think if you are self-reliant and you feel strong enough about yourself, you can do whatever you think you need to do. And so in 2001, with really nothing, I had never run my own law firm. I had never had any real background in running a firm or understanding what was going on. I ended up in a $200 a month back room of a glass and mirror building, like basically in the hallway. I look back at it and I think, who would ever hire a lawyer in this little circumstance? But I also was a fan of Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle. He was a guy who produced a major movie financed on his credit cards. Just that story resonated with me, and I just felt I've never missed a debt. I've never missed a payroll. I've never defaulted on anything with anyone in this business. I always did whatever it took to get it done. So there I am in this little office. Frankly, didn't have much support from home, things at that time. And just in classic Steven fashion, I sort of made it up as I went along. Now, if I'd had CRISP back then, Michael, we might have had a different origin story. But you came along at the right time.
I was in high school back then.
You might have been even younger than that.
Yeah. What did that first year look like for you? Do you recall any of the experiences of just year one, starting from ground zero?
Yeah. Every day the phone would ring. I would answer every single call, anything, whatever it was. For $250, I would drive, an hour to court, get a parking ticket, not a speeding ticket, but a parking ticket, maybe two. And then, for $250, drive back, put it in the bank, pay the light bill, pay whatever it was, and then service crazy debt. I just had huge bills that I had to pay. And of course, I was raising a family and had a wife and two kids and was always responsive to them. I remember one time, the only thing I really did back then was I would go to a bowling league like once a week. I didn't have a poker night. I didn't travel. I didn't do anything. I just worked. Even on vacation, I would have a yellow pad. That's how old I am. I'm young, but I'm old. I would have a yellow pad at the pool on our occasional Florida vacation. I'd be on the phone the whole time, answering calls, and I would just say to the world, look, this one call could pay our bills. I have to do this. So I did what I had to do. It was, wasn't great.
When did it really start to gain momentum? Like, was there a specific moment where things just started to really move in the right direction, moving past some of the adversity and more into positive momentum?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two answers to that. I think there was the pre-CRISP era where I was working so much and capable, very fortunate, I'm sort of ADD and I'm able to do 30 things at once, but jack of all trades, master of none. So the problem was I would just be putting out fires all day. There was no management here. And I was successful in spite of myself. And this is my really thank you to CRISP. And I've always been honest about it, how I feel about things. That dynamic changed for me when I was able to manage my firm and put in standard operating procedures, do all that stuff. So part B to that thing is when things changed is when I got structure through CRISP and organization and coaching. And frankly, kind of a wake-up call to do a little more adulting, because as you know, I like to say, I ran this place like a fraternity house, and I am Brother Bluto. So it's been really a good run. And I can't say enough about structure and purpose and whatnot, because I'm 63 years old now. So I was in my 60s when I signed up with CRISP. I could have sailed off into the sunset. My life wasn't terrible. I paid my bills. I traveled. I don't want for anything. And I'm not a millionaire. Far from it. In fact, I paid my bills. We had some losses last year. We took a shot with family law, a division that just didn't work. I have zero regrets. I'm mad at myself for not managing more because I should have done better. I should have listened to Jessica your wife, right? Everybody who listens to the podcast know who Jessica is. Some of her lectures are like right on point. In fact, 2 years ago at the summit, when she's talking about the type of leader, my team is pointing at me like, that's you, peacemaker. That's you. I'm hiding under the table, but I know it's true. So anyway, Mike, that's it. That was the turning point, A and B. A was, just long enough in the business to be mediocre, or as we often say, right? Top of good, bottom of best, average, no good, not good enough for me. And especially once I adopted the right mindset with my coaches and all that. So as long as, let's see, it's Miguel and Jessica, as long as they don't sell this company, man, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think only the people from the summit 2 years ago will get that
Right.
reference. Steven, how would you describe the culture of the firm today?
We're good, really good. It has gone through a lot of change. We did a couple of things right. We started to fire people, which I couldn't have done that 5 years ago. It just wasn't I'm a nice guy and I just let everybody do whatever they want. And sometimes I was too busy to pay attention. We're not that way anymore. So we've cleaned house politely, nicely. We're not mean. In fact, I should have fired a whole group of attorneys in November of last year. But I gave them not only the month of November, but in crisp fashion, I let everybody have the last 2 weeks of the year paid off from December 19th through the end of the year, even though I knew I was going to fire 5 people who were horribly underperforming. But I just felt like, what's the darn difference? So I gave them a little grace, but the culture is wonderful and it's a reflection of how well we do in our community. We are there for people. We donate not just money, but time and effort. And also, newsflash, I'm in Toledo, Ohio, which is a very small market. It's a modest city. It's not in a growth spurt of any kind. It hasn't had much of a renaissance, but there are great opportunities here. But I feel like we do the most with what we have here in our community. And, that's been a great thing. I got a bunch of stories that are personal to me about the things we've done that, nobody needs an extra dollars, but those things other people will never experience. I hope they get the opportunity to. I hope they get the opportunity to somebody say to them, thank you for sponsoring this event. Thank you for being there for our family. To be honest, yesterday we got a thing where an autism scholarship was in my name for donations that we did for autism for this little girl to get this special device. And I'm very emotional when I read that letter. I think to myself, wow, that beats the hell out of some stupid settlement or fancy whatever. No question.
I love that. What about, I know you said you have a lot of stories of some of the impact that you make. Please, I'd love for you to share some. Like, what are some of the stories you think back on that when you're having, a challenging day or a challenging week, you look back on and say, hey, this is worth it?
I need them sometimes. I think we all do. I love when I listen to the podcast, the reality of how life is. It's not all perfect, It must be nice. Yeah, work harder. It must be nice, work harder. So the reality is people only see that part of it. Again, that autism scholarship was very nice. We had a male person who's been on the job like 40 years. Nobody ever did anything for him. On his anniversary, we gave him a gift. He sent us a letter. On a regular basis, we get notes from people who say, nobody's ever done something like that for us before. Nobody's ever even come to our organization and done anything. So that's a tribute to my team and our culture to throw that back, because that is everybody pulling all the oars in the same direction. So we've listened to Cy Wakeman a few times, read her books, assign it upon hiring, and when people actually read it, it works pretty well for us.
What about, I guess, thinking more broadly about the vision for the firm? What was it when you started? How has that evolved to now?
I don't think we could spell vision when we started. I just wanted to survive, So, I think I always felt that we could do well, that there were opportunities to be successful. I lived in Los Angeles for a while, and then I moved to Toledo, Ohio. And I've always said that, you can be happy in a very average place and unhappy in a beautiful place. You have to decide what you want. So in some respects, my vision to come to Toledo was to do the best I could be, but I was never going to get there because not only was I not going from good to great, I was just average because I wasn't managing. I wasn't taking it in a more professional and direct fashion. And the Game Changer book was great So I read that, and then I've come to every single summit. I'm going to throw that in early. When you started with the coaching program, that was it for me. I was like, yes, that is exactly what I need. And all the other groups out there that do wonderful, good work for their clients and all that, no, I have nothing bad to say about them. But the rigor with CRISP and the amount of reinvestment in resources for our lawyers is outstanding. So now my vision is we're going to be the best firm we can be. When I sat at Game Changer last year, or a year ago before this one, I said to my team, we could be firm of the year. Little Toledo, Ohio, modest budget, one-man band sometimes, couple of great admins. We could be firm of the year. So the vision for us is I want to be the best I can be. That should be everybody's goal, right? I know when I first met you and you were urging everybody not to eat their cookie till the second day of the summit, you're not the same guy physically or mentally or even professionally than you are today. But you have always evolved to make yourself better. I think I have an Evolve t-shirt at home too. Well, I like that path, Michael. I really do. And so for me, that's the vision. The vision is be the best person you can be and then bring everybody with you.
I want to get into some specifics if we can, Stephen, just in terms of what are some of the initiatives that you do internally at the firm, just in terms of things that are culture related or operations related that you believe are a competitive advantage for the firm.
Sure. So in a very structured fashion, we have a monthly calendar of events that we plan a year in advance with input from everybody in the firm. So not only do we do internal events, we had a potato tasting thing, and we had a find the ducks contests and good stuff that builds rapport. And then we'll go out to dinners and we'll have events, and then we sponsor things. We do a Mud Hens game where we invite a lot of our clients. We do the charity events. We support races. We support any kind of charitable opportunity. So on that culture side, I think everybody's engaged and they feel good about it because they know we're all doing good, and that's that good vibe. And then internally, again, still developing in some respects because we've had such dramatic turnover. Anytime you essentially fire 5 people in January, but we're already rolling. Can't say enough about the focus retreats, which we engage in here. I love my monthly coach. I love my quarterly meetings. I love the Super Summit, but the focus retreat, absolute gold. Second might be the podcast, because I really do like the podcast, but the focus retreat is great. So quarterly, we go through our list and we usually hit 8 or 9 of our 10 things. It's so gratifying. And if people don't know what the focus retreat is, again, it's a crisp opportunity to have somebody on site call you out, give you the tasks, and make a specific set of goals. And then shame on you if you can't take care of business. So internally, I think we're starting to have the regular meetings, which we have been haphazard a little bit. I'm the guy who's busy working on my business, in my business, and not enough on the business. But hey, one day at a time.
And Stephen, I know you've described yourself in the past as like a peacekeeper by nature, and how has that served you at times? How have you evolved as a leader? Like, I guess, talk to me about that.
I think you have to look yourself in the mirror and you can't fake it. I think I'm pretty authentic. I take some pride in that. I am who you're going to see. I'm not a dope. I know how to be an appropriate trial lawyer. I don't know how to negotiate with people. I do know how to work things. I'm not guileless, but I do think that nice guys don't always finish last. But I've taken a lot of these lessons over the last 2 or 3, I think 3 or 4 years now, and added them into my repertoire. It just made me a stronger person. I fire people now. We had performance reviews last month, which we didn't used to do. All of the questions, by the way, provided by Chris. Thank you so much. So, we're actually running much more of a business-like organization. Our trust account has always been on par, but now we actually have real numbers. And we were successful in spite of ourselves. We produced some big jumps in the last year. I was surprised, frankly, because again, when you're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, you don't realize it. But now we're having regular reporting and a dashboard and all those internal structures. And that just makes our firm much better.
What about externally? Just I'm curious for what do you believe your firm specifically does differently? What sets you apart from some of your competitors?
We are always the first people to call people back. So Gary Falkowitz would be proud of us for returning calls on the dime, and we're very accessible. Now that's a trade-off in life. You know, if you say to your clients, which I do, here's my personal cell phone number. You can call me anytime. And I do get calls all the time. And I've traded some of my life essence, I know, and I'm sure lawyers have this dilemma. And I'm a quick start. So if somebody calls me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I can take that call. I can handle it fast. It's in my nature. Not everybody works that way. The famous open door policy, most people, that's a bad policy because then people come into your office. You know, I get that, but I'm okay with it. I know that there's some structural things. So I think the fact that we are very responsive to our clients, and of course, we're going to have a crisp quarterly coming up to talk about the client experience, but I think we've always been very focused on that. So we send the swag and we follow up with the phone calls. And you'd be surprised how one nice phone call a month after a case is over, out of the blue, just to say hello to somebody, it seems to me like that should be automatic. But, you know, when I go to crisp quarterlies, I learn things all the time on site that I didn't think of. Their magic, the shared experiences of all the lawyers. So I hope I give somebody at least one good idea today. That'd be my pleasure.
In your experience, Devin, because you're obviously around a lot of really successful firm owners, you're one yourself. Like, what do you think, just from your perspective, what separates the most successful firm owners from everybody else?
Much like Baskin Robbins, you know, there's 31 flavors of people. So some of the folks in the room, as an example, when we all get together, are very quiet. They'll never say a thing, and they are spectacular business people. But they're quiet. They're introverted, so you're not necessarily going to hear from them. And then other people are more extroverted, more likely to talk. They want to share such and such. I try to find a nice middle ground there myself, although that may surprise you based on today's discussion. So I do think, though, that it's probably the idea of focusing on processes and making sure that you are doing things in an orderly fashion. Because I was very haphazard for many years, and you can get lucky, but we've had a whole seminar on luck. The truth is, luck is the residue of design, yes, and you need luck. I'm a lucky guy, and I do count on that once in a while. I hope I get lucky, but the harder I work, I get luckier I get. So I don't know, Michael. I don't know that there's a simple answer to it. It sounds like a great question, for an AMMA. What defines the better owners? And I think those people who are committed to the craft, committed to making themselves better, and willing to learn, listen, and all that good stuff.
What's next? What's on the horizon for you and the firm?
Some great things this year. In spite of really what was most people I don't think could survive the kind of financial hit I took with family law. But again, since I don't need anything really, everything I have, what's essential is invisible. That's what I need: the health of my grandchildren, my own health, my family, and of course my staff and friends. So we're doubled down on our success. We committed again to every program and more and better social work. But also, we've increased our budget with all of our vendors to increase our personal injury practice. Now that we've gotten rid of the family law, focus on criminal defense, but personal injury. We're a sponsor of the world famous Toledo Mud Hens.
Talk about it. So for people that don't know what that is.
So, Toledo, Ohio was made famous a little bit by Max Klinger on the TV show MASH. He wore the Mud Hens jersey. And of course, that sort of led to a national understanding of Toledo and the Mud Hens. And Toledo Mud Hens have a fantastic minor league baseball park here. I invite you, Michael, and your whole family, and anyone who listens to this on August 7th to Groth and Associates Night at the Toledo Mud Hens. All you can eat ice cream on me. But we sponsor the Mud Hens now. We're doing more advertising. And the only other answer, honestly, is to work hard. That is the answer. I didn't like to lose that money. I don't like to lose. And I'm going to make myself better by learning from those mistakes. And we're going to go hard this year to get that back. And then use it wisely and enjoy ourselves.
Stephen, outside of the wall, I know we sort of led with this, but obviously, you're training, you've done marathons in the past, you've done the Spartan races. What are you up to now when you're not practicing law?
I'm a little more boring, a little more focused, I would say. I host a monthly cigar club for men and women. I do it at a local cigar place, and it's for me. I'm like George Burns. The cigar is a little bit of a prop, but it's a social thing. Get people out, get to talk. I'm not a big drinker. I don't really drink much at all, but I always say travel is my gin and tonic. So I'm very fortunate. I'm a hell on wheels with points and miles and all that stuff. And I make a point of it. And I've even said this at closing at Crisp Quarterlies. I urge everybody to travel more. If you are overworked and you haven't taken a vacation in forever, and I've been there, so I understand it. But if you've got a modicum of success, get out, travel, see the world. Nothing is ever guaranteed. So I'm a huge, believer in travel. In fact, if I may humbly say, when you mentioned you had gone to a recent event that was based on a video game and the concert,
Yeah, in
and
Toronto.
you mentioned all the places that they were around the world, I had been there. So I thought, okay, I'm doing all right then. And again, we're only, you only live once. My strongest message to everybody is live, travel, enjoy the life. Don't get so caught up in the mundane. It's important. And maybe I'm a little bit too cavalier about it, but there's a balance.
And there's going to be people listening. They're going to say, well, Stephen, easy for you to say, must be nice. But
Yes.
I think it's a testament to everything we've just discussed prior in terms of how you've been able to grow and build the firm over these years that have enabled you to be able to do that travel.
Yeah, I love the must be nice speech. You nailed that. And for those people who weren't at a summit, but I mean, the reality is, of course, people only see the big things, the travel, the this, the that, the glory. They don't see underneath the iceberg. They don't see the depths of despair and depression and the fight. If you're going to run a business and run a law firm, you're going to endure that. And how you choose to celebrate and enjoy the benefits of your success, that's your choice. You know what, Michael? You'll never meet a hater doing better than you, right? I love that quote. I use it all the time. People are, they think, oh, he's going to Vegas, he's going here, he's going there. Yeah, come take a look at what I've struggled through, what it took to survive, how I got here, the pain. I've probably had 20 people who have either stolen from me, embezzled, failed to work, failed to do things. And that's on me. I get it. I was too busy working in my business to manage those people. It's a cautionary tale. You really have to pay attention. And I've been guilty at times of not, benign neglect. Is not a great policy when it comes to running a business.
And Stephen, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you?
I put some thought into this, Michael. I'm going to read you a quote if you don't mind. A game changer is someone who decides that normal is unacceptable, designs a different future on purpose, and is willing to endure the pain to get there. Now, I love that quote because normal, I could have easily sat back and just not done anything different and cruise right through life. I could design a different future because I wanted something better for myself, my family, the people around me. And I'm willing to endure the pain of 515 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. wake-ups, workout. I've worked out in 20 cities around the world, every day. I haven't missed a single day, not one, no cheat days, every day, some form of very good exercise and whatnot. But I want you to know that, do you know where that quote comes from?
Yeah.
Mogul AI.
Ah, okay. Can I take credit for that, right? The AI said it.
So I thought to myself, and I've used Mogul AI quite a bit, and I want to thank you. I have a wonderful mattress because of Mogul AI.
Oh, good.
I have a very good AG1 creatine morning routine because of Mogul AI. Mogul AI has helped me with, of course, sleep has been great. And so being a game changer is all of that, deciding you don't want to be normal. You're going to change your outcome. You're going to accept that it's going to be difficult and you're going to take those hardships. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be nice. It must be nice. It's going to be nice.
Stevin's story is about creating impact in his life, business, and community. Next up, we're joined by Michael Beckman and Kayla Grayson of Viles & Beckman, a Florida-based firm known for their trademarked 5-star client experience. I began our conversation by asking Michael and Kayla about the origin of their firm.
The origin story is Marcus and I, we started this firm. We started it with very similar goals of what we want to do as attorneys. We both enjoyed being creative, thinking outside the box, and getting the most value we could for our clients. And we were growing okay, but we were missing direction. We were missing having, unified team. We were really good attorneys. And the biggest thing we were missing was being more than just a firm, being a company to what we are now. We're now a brand, the 5-star brand where, our main goal with every client is not just to, be the great attorney that fights hard, but to actually provide that exceptional service that's part of our core values, that's part of our vision, to make sure that each client, and this is what Marcus used to say before he passed, he wanted to always be the Ritz-Carlton of law firms. And the service that we've put in is where we're at today.
Kayla, what about you? Like, how did you come into the firm, and
Yeah.
obviously you've grown throughout the firm now.
I have actually. So I started with the firm 11 years ago, and I've kind of worked in almost every position throughout the firm. And so I have a unique experience of being able to see where we were when I started, which was, from an employee standpoint, you walk in, and I remember my first day, like I got walked to my desk and was like, here's your desk, here's your logins, good luck. And to now we have a full onboarding program. We've got, we got first day lunches, and the whole week is just culture and diving into our core values and that sort of thing, and really getting them encompassed into the culture. I've seen the firm grow, from the culture standpoint that way, but also from the client service standpoint. It's gone from everybody works their cases their own way to now we have systematized, casework and procedures and that sort of thing. And it's been really fun because we've been able to grow it from, what I loved about it back then was that everybody felt close, and it was a close-knit team. And we've been able to capture that and keep that as we grow and even make it better.
How would you guys describe, I guess, the original vision for the firm, and how has it evolved since then, just over the last several years?
There was no original vision for the firm. There was no, until we joined Crisp, we actually had no vision. It was Michael and Marcus just trying to be really great trial lawyers, right? That was really our vision. We're actually on our second iteration of our vision. Our first iteration was kind of, we just put a vision together. And it wasn't completely us. We've actually tweaked it in about the past couple of years because we wanted to expand to make sure it was for all the communities we serve. But probably the most important part was exceptional service and making that a key part of our vision. So it went from, and it was, it was embarrassing how little, like Kayla was explaining when she came to the firm, was like, here you go. I mean, there was literally no vision except, hey, do well for the clients, make money. That was it. And now we have a nice, strong vision that each one of our team members, follow, within, and it's really grown our culture.
We'd be remiss if we didn't at least spend some time talking about Marcus, who I originally met when we first started working with Viles and Beckman, and in his passing in 2023, that's often a very, very challenging thing for firms, especially when you have a name partner that passes on. But it seems like you guys, you didn't just respond, but you responded so strong and so well to honor his legacy, and the firm's continued to grow since. Kayla, can you talk about your experience during that time? I know you were working very closely with Marcus just for several years even prior to that.
Yeah. So before Marcus's passing and before he got sick, really, he really started us in the CRISP journey and the CRISP ecosystem. And it was funny because he used to always come back fired up from workshops. And I had no idea what he was talking about naturally. And it wasn't until we started getting me involved that I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. And so he really started us on that path. And then I have to give Michael a lot of credit because, up until that point, it was Marcus and I really doing the business end of things. And Michael, his passion is litigation, and he was running our litigation department. And when Marcus got sick, Michael really had to come in and learn business and learn not business, but marketing and finance and hiring and culture and all of that in a very short period of time. And so I give Michael a lot of credit because he, where some people take years to learn it all, Michael just dove it in and learned it, in 2 to 3 months, and continued to learn over the course of time. And so we were able to take what Marcus started, and his vision in that, and really build on it into something that has now been, Michael and I's vision, and build off of that. It came through that at the five-star law firm and our trademark there. And really everything that we've built around client experience and serving in the community and all of that really, really started from that turning point.
Michael, what about on your end? I'm just curious as to what your experience was like during that time. And then, as Caleb mentioned, kind of transitioning from like litigator to really more of a leader within the firm.
Yeah, it was tough for me. He was a friend, very much like a brother. We were together, for almost 20 years. And he was an economics major. He had an economics degree, and my bachelor's was in theater. It's kind of obvious which one is going to handle the business side in that type of scenario. He had a very brilliant creative mind as both an attorney and a businessman. Like Kayla would say, he would come back fired up, and half of the stuff made sense, and half of it, another half didn't, because I wasn't there. But I trusted. He was bringing back these ideas, moving us forward in the direction the direction that we really needed to go. When he passed, like Kayla said, it was a big momentum shift for me to learn about marketing. I didn't know the difference, for instance, between a lead generator versus branding, but the billboards, to me, it was just all different types of marketing. So there was a lot to learn. We implemented some changes after Marcus's passing, as we learned, as we developed, such as we didn't just have a pot of money. We actually, allocated so much towards marketing, allocated so much toward owners, allocated so much towards operations. We made it, it was much more strategical when we started to build. These were a lot of things, Kayla and I together sat down together, learned from Crisp, and developed, and we, put a lot of time in it. I'm glad that Kayla's, giving me some props here, but honestly, she is probably the most incredible COO. I'm glad we're doing it too, because she has been the absolute support and brains, behind her operations, that has really helped, working along with me to, to get us to where we are now, more of a brand than just a firm.
And Kayla, I want to dive into your background, just even in the Navy. Like, were there any principles that you brought from your experience there to to the leadership that you do today?
Yeah, so many. I think that's why Bernie and I get along so well, is he's really able to take, those Navy leadership skills that they teach us, and implement it, and kind of take it from like the military perspective over to the civilian perspective. But for me, it's all about leading people and coming alongside them and finding where their passion lies, because if they're able to trust their leader and know that that you're going to come alongside them, and you're able to build that respect, and they can see where they're going and where you're going as a company, they're going to follow. So much of what I've learned in the Navy from leadership, I take over. And then also the other part of it is, things like that we're talking about at the last CRISP workshop, was, having contingencies in place, and looking at, strategically planning how you're going to roll out initiatives, and how you're going to train your team up so that they're in the military, they're ready to go to battle, or they're ready to accomplish the mission. In the civilian sector, it's really, how are we going to accomplish this mission, and how are we going to deliver five-star experience through it? And that, to us, is accomplishing the mission here. And so it really does parallel. It's funny, because up until I got into the business side of things, through CRISP and that sort of thing, I never noticed, like, you always know the Navy's core values of honor, courage, and commitment, but I never really realized, oh, wow, the Navy is set up as a business too. And so now I see all of the parallels, and I've been able to really connect the dots, and it helps me kind of set everything up in play on both sides.
I've heard you guys mention like this five-star client experience, and like this, I believe you even trademarked it. Can you guys speak to what that is, why it's important to you, like how it's essentially marketed within the firm?
The five-star experience, we have, to ensure that each client receives, I'll give you a minor example of part of the five-star experiences. They must be called back. Now, we're not talking about intake, when someone's a client, they must have a call back within 24 hours. The attorney and the case managers have to have, a conference with the client, within, 24 to 48 hours of signing. So there's a lot of different things that we put into our operations, our processes to make sure that the clients have that absolute experience, because we don't want them to just come to us. And every attorney out there says they can fight hard, they're going to go in there and take on the insurance companies. But when the client is with us, we make sure that everything about them is made. All their needs are met. The empathy is there with our team. We have team training on empathy. We make sure that that 5-star experience, that we make sure to provide that to the clients. How we were able to trademark it was kind of interesting, because there's a lot of law firms that tried to trademark it. We were able to obtain the trademark not because we were using it as an adjective, but because it was in our vision, in our mission. It was part of our core values, and we had a 5-star client experience well before we even applied to the trademark office. For us, when a client comes to us, we don't want them to walk away from our firm after everything's over and absolutely, despise our firm or not even think about us. We want the client to always remember us, to know that we did treat them like family. We did fight for them like family. And that whenever they had a question, they didn't have to wait 2 days for an attorney to get back to them. Yeah, I hear horror stories when clients come into our office. And the one thing I want it to be is, and I hate to say this, but not a doctor's office, where you go into that, you get there in the lobby and you have to wait a half an hour. Then they put you in another room and you have to wait, like another half hour. I didn't want that for the clients. I wanted our client experience for a multitude of reasons. One, it's the right thing to do. Two, when that client has that experience, when you have that communication, you actually can represent the client better. You can understand them. You can understand their pain they're going through. You can understand the liability. There's so many factors that communication bridges that gap, that also creates the value for the client. And later on, when they want to refer somebody to you, are they going to refer an attorney they had that treated them like they were the Motel 6? And Motel 6 is a great brand, but it's different than we want to provide. Or do they want, or do they want to refer somebody to the law firm that treated them like the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons would? So that experience is the cornerstone of what we do for every client every day.
Kayla, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, it's really based on the theory of unreasonable hospitality and the fact that people, will not always remember what you say, but they'll always remember of how you make them feel. And so that's what we've trained our team on, is we want our clients to feel like they were family from the very first phone call. So from the very first time that they call our firm, they should be feeling that all the way through the end of the case. It's funny because I had a moment about a year ago, and I was sitting there getting my car maintained at the dealership. And as I'm sitting in the lobby, I get a text message and I click on the link, and it's a video of my mechanic walking me around my car and showing me the air filter and showing me this. And it was just an epiphany to me of, if a car dealership can do this, if a mechanic can do this, surely we can do this in the law firm. And so that's kind of the challenge and that, I brought back to the firm and I brought back to the leadership team. And we always want to up our experience. We're not just competing with other law firms down the street. We're competing with the Amazons of the world, and we're competing with really everybody, because I can order something right now and have it on my doorstep in 2 hours and have a picture of it and that sort of thing. And that's the level of service that people expect nowadays. It's not just how the law firm down the street is going to treat them. It's how the expectations have risen. And so we're constantly challenging our team to think in that aspect of, how can we better serve? What is that unreasonable hospitality next step that we can do to go above and beyond for our clients?
And I know you both have had seen the inner workings of some of the most successful firms in the country and the leaders behind them. And I'm just curious, just from your experience, what do you believe separates top firms from the average ones? Like, what do they do differently? What would you pin that to?
Me personally, it's great to see some of the top firms, in the country and get to pick their brains. I would say the biggest thing that the top firms do is they run it like a company. They don't run it just like a law firm. They actually have everything they do intentionally. Everything they do, it's for the company to make sure the company's stronger, the business is stronger, not just to be good attorneys. Now, being great attorneys is very important because you've got to go get the verdicts. You have to win for your client. All that is important. A lot of attorneys can offer that. They can offer being a good attorney, but I think that is one of the biggest separating factors is that they run it like a business. They run it like a company. The things that I have learned in some of the breakout groups in CRISP have been invaluable. Every time I come to a workshop, just any of the conversations I've had, I'm always learning something new. I'm always learning how to be better. And sometimes I reflect on, whew, and I can't believe some of the times we didn't go bankrupt years ago, the way we ran the firm. You get a big case in and boom, you just spend that money. There's no intentionality like you're going to put like we do, 25% behind marketing of every dollar that comes in. That separates, companies, versus companies that just will pay, okay, wow, we got this big check in. Let's keep this much for ourselves. And, let's allocate this much, $1,000 towards marketing. Having that plan, having a design, having a process, and, being intentional with everything you do, I think is probably the biggest separators.
I agree with Michael. I think definitely running it like a business is really important. The other factor to me is really what measure of success when you're looking at success. For me, the ones that I'm most inspired about are the ones that run it like a business, but also invest in their people, and you can see their people like really, really are invested in the brand and the mission that they're doing. And, there's so many law firms in CRISP that I've been so inspired because I grew up in the legal industry kind of in my career of seeing, just basically billing hours and this, and they work you to death and that sort of thing. And I've been so inspired by the firms in CRISP because they really do care. They care about the clients. They care about, of course, the business, but they also care about their team and building their team up and really creating a mission that their team can get around. And I think that really is inspirational and is really like the next wave of the legal market and the legal field coming up. Is it's really cool to see people investing in like culture and client experience. Of course, working the case is really important, but like those other aspects are also just as important.
I want to come back to you guys, and I'm curious just from over the last several years, like just some of the challenges you've overcome. Michael, I'll start with you. Like, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
That putting the client first is probably the most paramount to success. Had a pretty big case and wound up going to another law firm, and I was working the case extremely hard. Like I was putting time in it, putting effort into it, but the communication between my firm and the client between Vols Beckman and the client was zero. It was lacking. And what they can't see, they don't know what's going on. They can't see it. Now we have a system where anytime a phase on their case changes, this is what we have currently, they get an automatic update that's sent to them from the file. We send surveys out to them constantly. How's your team performing? What's that? So we're actually making sure that the client has that communication, because lost that case, you're talking several millions of dollars. That realization of just with the client, if the client doesn't know what you're doing, if the client doesn't know your case is being worked on, then as far as they're concerned, you're not doing the thing. And there's somebody else out there who's advertising on TV or that they're receiving emails from that's basically telling them, we can fight for you. We can fight for you. And they hear that. They don't see you fighting for them because they're not hearing from you. That was very instrumental in, changing the way I was thinking on how I would handle cases from there on out in communication.
Kayla, what about, in your case, what do you know now that you wish you knew then, just based on the obstacles you guys have overcome and the challenges you've solved?
I think for me, you don't have to be afraid to break the mold. Like when I first started, it was, well, what are other law firms doing? And what should we do and be doing? And when we really let go of that and been like, well, what do we want this law firm to be? And what is our vision? And stepping outside of like the legal box, so to speak, of what everybody does and really opening up that creativity and seeing that blank canvas is really when it's like it hit for me of like, we can create this into anything that we want. And that to me was a big turning point for us in the business side of things is we can create our own vision, we can create our own mission, and we can do things differently than every other firm out there. And that really was when it really like lit the fire for me.
What would you guys say is the biggest challenge today?
Biggest challenge today is as you grow, keeping it all together, making sure that you have the right leaders in place as you grow. You keep your culture as you grow. You don't lose that culture. When you expand to different locations, making sure that those new locations are operating correctly under the culture. That you put the right leader into that spot to run that location. Because if you start opening another location, expanding and growth is not going to work if that foundation starts to crumble. That foundation that allowed you to become a brand, to start that building, to give that 5-star experience. If that starts to crumble, you're no longer going to get those 5-star Google reviews. One thing I'm always proud of is we just don't get, the one line, good attorney, great attorney. People on their own, Michael, and I absolutely love going through our reviews and sometimes looking at them. We get almost like War and Peace novels with some of our reviews. And if we don't keep the leadership, the culture aligned as we grow, all that's going to crumble.
What about looking ahead? Kayla, I'm curious of your perspective, just in terms of AI and what's coming next. What does the future look like for Voss and Beckman?
It's interesting. We've had that conversation so many times now because, again, like I said, we're not just competing with law firms. We're looking at potential non-attorney ownership coming in, and bigger pockets of money, that sort of thing coming into the legal industry. And so, for us, it's being on the leading edge of technology, and and it's empowering our team to not be afraid of AI, but to lean into it. And for me, it's, how can we take away that mundane task and those the mundane tasks that take a lot of the time that nobody likes to do, and then really take that time and pour into more client experience or more strategy so that we can better win cases and better serve our clients. And so my biggest thing is, yes, we're utilizing AI in many different areas, and that allows us to serve our clients better because we're not spending so much time on that mundane stuff. And so we're doing a lot of focus groups right now on the freeing question of, if I take away X number of hours from you this week by utilizing AI, how are you going to better serve the client, or how are you going to be more strategic in the case? And so really getting our team to think in that way is really exciting, and that's where we're going.
Michael, what about you? Does anything keep you up at night?
Lots of things, keep me up at night, but probably, making sure that everything is aligned. I'm always afraid of attorneys derailing that. And, if you get a few bad apples in there trying to break down the culture. So there's lots of things that keep me awake at night. The Arizona Supreme Court, allowing non-attorneys to own law firms keeps me awake at night, because I've thought about the different ways how, even though it's in Arizona, how they can infiltrate Florida with no problem. Just because they're in Arizona doesn't mean they can't take those cases, from Florida. So it's scary, and technology allows them to do that. But then again, I love technology. I think it's one of the things where our firm leads. It was a big part of our vision day. It was a promise we made to our team that we will always keep on top of, change, shift whenever needed, to make sure that whatever technology is out there is available for them, so they can always make sure that they do the absolute top shelf job for the clients. So technology on some hands, concerns me. And then in other ways, it really excites me. And I know it's the big part of our growth.
And guys, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you? And Michael, I'll start with you, and then Kayla, you can close us out.
Yeah, being a game changer to me, it's kind of like it's funny. When I was a terrible businessman but a good attorney, I was a game changer as an attorney. I was on $10,000 insurance policies. I was turning those into multi-million cases. To be a game changer, it's when you keep up with what's going on. If you see a shift, you just don't go, you know what, I'm going to just keep running into a wall. I'm going to just keep going straight ahead. Game changing to me means you actually change. If there's a law firm that's opening up, that's non-attorney owned in Arizona, how do you shift what you're doing to make sure that in 2 years, 5 years from now, that they're not your competition? They're competition for other firms, but they're not your competition. Thinking outside the box, not just from an attorney standpoint, but from a company standpoint. And I think by being our firm being game changers is one of the reasons why we won the Client Experience Award at CRISP. And, as we were talking a little bit earlier in the podcast, there are incredible firms, especially in the CRISP X program, that, had that culture. To win that was huge for us. And being a game changing, law firm prior, there's no way we could have run that, but we didn't just keep going straight. We made sure that when we saw problems, we shifted, and we shifted in the right way, and we did it intentionally. And we did it with a lot of collaboration between Kayla and myself. And to me, that's what game changing is: being ready to change at every moment, no matter what's going on.
I agree with Michael. I mean, for me, a game changer is somebody who sees obstacles and turns them into opportunities. And, we've done that in many different ways. We've seen our fair share of obstacles, and they're not going to stop. Just as in life, you see an obstacle, and it's going to help you grow, and it's going to help you be better. And so a game changer is somebody that sees that and embraces it and even leans into it.
Viles and Beckman is designed to deliver next-level client experience, but our next guest applies a different kind of rigorous process to his work. Next up, we're joined by Craig Greening, founder of the Greening Law Group in Texas. Craig has differentiated his criminal defense practice by applying his background in science and engineering to gain a decisive advantage in the courtroom. I began our conversation by asking Craig about what marketing moves he's made to stand out from the competition.
A lot of these lawyers get on TikTok and they dance and get naked and do all those kind of things. And I just didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to build a brand of somebody you can trust, somebody that's going to help you stay out of trouble. I think that's the best thing you can do as a lawyer is say, hey, I don't want to have to represent you one day, but I will if I have to. And so what we did was these pop-up lawyer videos to kind of build our brand. We did the Chris videos too, but those are big brand producers, but just something to set us apart. So we got together with y'all and did some pop-up lawyer videos. And it was more of like, I brought my son into the mix. He's an actor in Atlanta, a real IMDb actor. And we got him in the videos as kind of the person that's about to commit a crime. And then I would pop up out of nowhere and say, hey, don't do that. Here's the law, and keep him out of trouble. So it's really we've got a lot of traction on them. I think one of them got, 1 million views or something. We went viral on a couple of them, but it's really, I think the feedback from everybody has been that, thank you for kind of informing us, kind of a PSA type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go back a little bit to the Craig Greening origin story. Were you always going to pursue law, become an attorney, start your own practice? Like, was there a bit of like entrepreneurial, like that type of behavior when you were a kid?
Yeah. I remember in high school, I went to kind of a seedy high school, a lot of bad things going on. And I remember some of my friends getting in trouble, and I was really good friends with our vice principal of the school. And so I would negotiate punishment for them and things like that back then. Didn't really know why I was doing it. I just wanted to have friends, and some of those people were getting in trouble quite a bit. I think the real roots, though, why I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer when I was young is when I was 16 years old. I'll never forget this. I was 16, Walsham Road, San Antonio. I'm driving with two of my African-American friends. We had a couple girls in the car, and we got felony stopped by a police officer, guns taken out, made us get on the ground, handcuffed us. And the police officer says to me in private, He says, "What are you doing with those?" And he uses the N word. I'll never forget that. It was defining, and that's really, I think, where my criminal defense career started, was then, because that was the moment that I understood what power looked like when it's pointed at people who can't fight for themselves. And I knew I wanted to be the person who could stand up and get in the way of that. That was life changing for me, and that's not the only time that kind of thing happened in San Antonio, with those same friends. And let me preface that by saying those two guys now that were with me, one is a retired colonel in the Air Force, and the other one's got the #1 radio show in Atlanta. These are guys that were on a path to be successful, just like me. I was on a path to be successful, but we got treated that way, and that's really what started my career.
Yeah. So then what was the impetus behind starting your own practice, right? I mean, there's one thing to say, hey, I want to stand up for those who've been wronged. You can go work at a law firm. What led to you starting your own firm?
For starting your firm, it's being in control of your life, being in control of your vision, being in control of the motto that you want to live by. And I worked as a prosecutor. I worked for another firm, and first off, being a prosecutor, I felt like I was just punishing people, not helping people. So that's one of the reasons why I left that position. But I was with another firm as an associate and a partner, and it just didn't have the same vision that I wanted. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be out there at the forefront and change people's lives. The motto came into effect of winning where it matters in the courtroom and in life. And when I talk to clients, I talk about the life part more than the courtroom part.
I'm curious, like, Craig, with your background, I believe you got a bachelor's in like mechanical engineering, and like you're also like a forensic lawyer scientist. Why take that, like, I guess that path and that approach? How's it a competitive advantage for you?
It's definitely a competitive advantage. If you think about, when I'm in the courtroom, I think about this case I had. I had a .23 blood test case. My client was in an accident. It was on St. Patrick's Day, and most lawyers would have pled that case out. And I'll never forget, there was this forensic scientist with DPS. He was considered the best in the state. And I started going through some of the data, and because I was trained on it, because I have actually tested blood tests or blood cases, I've actually tested alcohol in blood myself in the lab, and I knew where things could go wrong. And I realized that none of the instruments that he had was calibrated. And what the defining moment was when I was in the courtroom and I looked into his eyes, and he knew I knew more than him. He knew I knew more than him. He knew I had him, and he started sweating. And he realized that he had screwed up the entire test. And we're talking about a .23 blood test. That would be the equivalent of having 20 beers for some people. And an accident. He knew I had him, but he still would lie. He still lied on the stand. He still tried to cover it up. And the jury found my client not guilty in 15 minutes. And he was gone the next week. That's what you have to have if you want the defense that you need. A lot of lawyers get into criminal defense that don't have the expertise. So being a forensic, a lawyer scientist, and having a mechanical engineering background, those are the kind of things that give you the advantage in the courtroom, because I have that scientific knowledge. So but the great thing about it was you got to be a lawyer that knows the questions to ask. And so I think that a lot of lawyers get in the DWI field or the intox manslaughter fields or drug cases and don't have the knowledge to be able to ask the right questions.
I'm sure you've got a lot of war stories. I'm wondering if there's like a specific case that you look back on that perhaps was a challenging case that for you was something that built a lot of confidence for you. And then I'm curious if there was a case that you were confident that you were going to win, but didn't go your way.
That happens every day. I think the case that I'm most proud of was I had a January 6th case, and it was controversial. And I'm apolitical. I don't get into that game. I'm here to defend my client. And I had a client that he had a little brother with him who was 15 years old, and they thought it was cool to go to the rally and then go down to the Capitol because that's what everybody said to do. And then they get trapped, and the only way out was to go through the Senate parliamentarian door and then go through the hallway and then get out that way because the police were tear gassing them and pepper spraying them and that kind of stuff. And they arrest my client. I'll never forget this call. The FBI called me and said, we want to arrest your client today. Can you turn him in Houston? And I said, yeah, I'll bring him down there. And he was scared, of course, but we got him out of jail, made many trips to Washington, D.C. for the case. But what I'm most proud of is that we fought that case so hard and so long that the judge didn't want to try the case. I think she thought we had a good chance of winning. And she postponed it to February 2026. Well, we all know what happened. That case got dismissed in January. And I'm proud of that because I really think my client didn't do anything wrong. He didn't intend. It wasn't one of these people that went all the way into the House area or the speaker's area. And I'm just proud of that client. And I get more proud about my clients than anything else because he had the courage to say, "I'm going to fight this. I'm going to move forward," instead of taking the plea deal that they were offering.
What about on the other side? Like just something that, you were so confident, you had such a strong case, didn't go your way. Like what happened there? And like you said, I mean, it happens to the best trial lawyers, but just curious what you learned.
Yeah, those are the heartbreaking cases when you think that you're going to win. I had a police officer that I represented that was just over the legal limit on DWI, and with my scientific background and all the things that I know, I was like, "This is a .10. I'm going to win this case because there's no way that the jury is going to convict this guy based on that result, based the way he looked on the video." But I made the fatal mistake of not realizing that my client was kind of a jerk to the police officer on the video, and I forgot about that. And I'll never make that mistake again. But I remember going back to see the jury after they found him guilty and he lost his career, that they said he had to have been intoxicated. Why would a police officer talk to another police officer like that? And so that was heartbreaking because what I try to focus on when I represent somebody is keeping their future, their dreams intact, their career intact, their family, their way of living, the way to support their family. And that was one case where he lost everything and he had to start over. And so it was very disappointing, but I learned a lot from that too at the same time.
How do you move on from cases like that? I imagine it weighs on you. Like I mean, it's difficult, but obviously you have to. Like, are there any strategies you employed to be able to carry on?
Honestly, it's the next client. You just move on to the next client and you get a win. That win, cheers you up and gets you back on the path because you know what you're there for. You know you're there. You're on this path to make people's lives better, to win in the courtroom and in life especially. And so the next win gets you there, and you don't ever forget those losses though. They always haunt you, but the wins keep you going.
So I want to talk a bit about the firm. I believe you founded the firm in 2010 in College Station. What made that a very unique value proposition in the sense that I imagine that the majority of your clients at the time were college students, right? Texas A&M students.
Yeah, being in College Station's a unique place. It's funny because when I came here, I'm a UT Law graduate, so a lot of my friends gave me a hard time about coming to College Station. And we got 100,000 college students here. We have Texas A&M University, Blinn College. We have the Rellis campus, which is a more of a technical type campus, but 100,000 people here. And what makes it unique is I have a son. He went to college, and when you have somebody off of college, the thing you worry about the most is that 2 a.m. call, right? I've been arrested, and that brings you the most anxiety. And so when you have basically kids, the young adults that are down here, and there's not a ton to do in College Station. I mean, we don't have the things you have like in Atlanta, New York, places like that. I went to college in Boston where we had a ton of things to do, and so they go out and party, and they make mistakes because they're young. But the reason why I came here is because I knew I could help people, but also at the same time, it is a good community for clients. I get 30,000 new clients every year that come into town. Possible clients, people that could be possible clients. There's no other place like that. And obviously from a business person's perspective, you're in a place where if your kid gets in trouble, you're going to pay to try to make it right. And so the parents definitely are very involved with the cases. When you get that first call at 7 a.m. after they've been arrested at 2 a.m., you have to put them at ease. I mean, you have to say, look, I understand where you're coming from. This is probably one of the worst moments of your life, especially your son's life or your daughter's life, but it's going to be okay. We're going to make this right, and we're going to try to keep that future intact.
Could you share an example of just, where you helped a student get a second chance? I mean, I'm sure this happens now very often for you, but any particular case that stands out?
Yeah, I had a student about 5-6 years ago that this one really stands out to me. He was charged. He was a bartender trying to work his way through college, and he got arrested for serving alcohol to a minor, which is a very serious offense in Texas. It's Class A misdemeanor. It comes with license suspensions and things like that. And I remember getting a call from his parents in the morning, and I assured them we would do everything we could to get him on the right path because he wanted to be a firefighter, EMS guy. He had a career path, and he was about to start that in the next 3 to 4 months. So we started looking into it. We got our investigator out there, and come to find out, we go into the bar and they have surveillance video. So we grab all the surveillance video, and we realized that a TABC agent, which in Texas is called Texas Alcoholic Beverages Commission, and they police alcohol violations. And we watched the video, and it was actually my client looking at the young 17-year-old girl on the sting saying, "You're not 21. You can't have a drink." Well, she looks around and says, "Hey, that's my dad over there." And you can see her do that on video. And then he hands the beer to the dad, and the dad hands the beer to the girl, which in Texas, a dad can give a daughter an alcoholic beverage. There's an exception there. Well, they immediately arrest him after that. So I got the police officer on the stand, the agent, and he lied. The minor lied. And I'll never forget that moment because it was the moment where I knew everything was going to change in the state of Texas. And I was on national TV for that. I was in every newspaper front page. It was a defining moment. And why it was so defining was my client got his life back. But even more so, we made a policy change. Now, every TABC agent has to have a body cam whenever they do any criminal sting. And I haven't had a TABC case where my clients violated that provision since I tried that case, because I just don't think they do it anymore. I think they're done prosecuting or done policing those cases.
Do you see a kind of an us versus them type of situation between you and the police, or do you find that there's times where you can work collaboratively? Like what's the dynamic like?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of police officers come to me for advice. I have a friend that's an ATF officer now down in Houston, and sometimes he'll come to me and ask me questions. For me, I want the community to be safe like anybody else. And I have a lot of friends that are police officers. We go out and get a drink together, or we'll hang out. I always tell police officers, I'm going to always be nice to you. I'm always going to be respectful. I'm just doing my job. It's the moment that you lie or try to cheat. That's when I become the Craig Greening you don't want to see.
So I know we talked about just being in College Station, like the fact that there's so many. I mean, like you just said, new clients every single year. But I think it was in March of 2020, something interesting happened, right? So all the kids get sent home. It's the pandemic. Like, what was going through your mind then? Like, how did the firm? Like, how were you able to pivot and adjust? Because that could have been, scary times.
You know how scary that was back then. I remember that was the decision that when I made to start scaling my firm and start growing as a lawyer. I had been in practice I had my own law firm for 10 years, and my revenue was the same for all 10 years. And I remember signing up with Crisp in October of 2019. I invested all this money. I invested all this money in marketing, doing the coaching. And I'll never forget when March 2020 happened, I panicked. Like everybody else did. We all panicked. Kids are going home from school. The bars aren't open. The courts are closed. And then you remember we had this talk. It was April 2020, and we had just like this. We're on video back and forth. What changed my life, and I'm not just trying to kiss your butt because I'm on the show, but what really changed my life was when you told me, "Don't be scared. This is the moment where leaders rise up. You got to double your marketing." I get off the call with you. I go to my wife. I says, "We're doubling marketing." She goes, "Well, why would you do that?" We don't have any money. I was like, "We got to do it. We got to do it." Michael said to do it. Who's Michael? And we did it. And we almost doubled our revenue in 2020. Almost doubled it. And it was game changing because we were able to get these ads cheaper and get 6 times, 10 times the value that we would have gotten. That we wouldn't have gotten that kind of value pre-COVID. So
I love that. And since that time, I guess, what are some of the other investments you've made in the firm since 2020? Have you scaled over the last few years?
I mean, hiring's been important. I've stumbled on hiring though. I used to hire by gut, by feeling, resume, those kind of things. Just until recently, honestly, I finally got the hiring down, and so we started having a funnel to go through. We used a thing called Crisp Recruit, which has been wonderful. We've got Tammy now. We've got Kimberly, our intake specialist. Tammy's my executive assistant. I mean, just great hires. Hiring the wrong people is the most stressful thing as an entrepreneur. I just, I've had more sleepless nights over hiring and losing people and having to fire people than anything else. So if there's anything that I've learned over the last 7 years is that, hiring is the most important thing, getting the right talent. And in criminal defense, it's different. We've got to have warriors with empathy. I need warriors. I don't need A players. I need warriors. People that come in and know that these clients have encountered the worst moment of their life, and they can't be scared. They got to get out there and fight, but they also got to have the empathy too. So I had this motto of we hire people that are warriors with empathy, and that's changed everything.
Talk to me through, I guess, a hiring or a team member that was a bit of a horror story. You have to say who they were, but just kind of one of the lessons learned and how you've applied that to future hires.
I had a director of operations that her resume looked great, but she knew everything to say in it. I'm EOS, I'm this, I'm that, and then and she played the game for a while. But because I didn't put her through all the systems and the funnel and the Colby and the print, and I didn't do all the right things, I just fell in love with the resume. I really did. And I was desperate to hire somebody. I was desperate because I needed somebody to take all these items off my plate. And it just ended up being the worst thing ever because we hired several people underneath her that I ended up having to fire after I fired her. And almost every single one of those people are gone now. I think there's one left, and actually I hired that person. So everybody that she hired is gone now. You scale up, you get to this point, you got all these employees, and then you got to fire them all. And that's the worst possible scenario. And so I've really been patient with hiring and just making sure I got the right person. Um, don't rush to judgment on that kind of thing.
What about on the converse? Like what's been a hiring success story? Somebody that you've hired that's been just an absolute godsend for the firm.
Oh, my EA right now, she's a killer. I was on my way to this podcast, and she gave me mints, water. She gave me a one pager that things I needed to remember to talk about. I mean, she's a killer, man. She's been great, and I'll give a shout out to her. Her name's Tammy. She's just been wonderful, and talk about a success story. I mean, every day she proves herself.
I love it, man. I love it. How would you describe the culture of the firm today?
The culture of the firm got great in 2020, 21. Fell apart for a while, but the culture is great now because you know what I do these scorecards. So I'm about to do after this podcast. I'm about to go do my Q1 one-on-ones, and I had this huge scorecard where there's actually a number associated with it where you get so many points for meeting the core values. So each core value I do 1 through 5. 5 means great, 1 means you're really bad on the core values. So I'd go through that, and then I go through what you're expected, what your KPIs are, and things like that. And I come up with a score at the end, and then we talk about it. How can we get better? That just makes the culture so much better because they know what I expect. I think a lot of leaders kind of run from the things that they don't want to talk about. And so the one-on-ones are like, let's have a candid conversation about what I expect and what you expect. And you could say anything you want in this one-on-one, and nobody's going to know about it. It's between me and you, but at least you can give me the hard love too and say, hey, I wish you would do this, or I wish you would do that. And I'm good with that. And I think that makes you a better leader.
Craig, where would you say, like, since the inception of the firm to now, like, how have you evolved as a leader? Like, if you were looking back at, like, the Craig Greening that started the practice, like, how are you different today?
I think I used to think that if I'm the best lawyer in the firm, that everybody's just going to say, oh, Craig's the greatest, and let me do what he does, and let me just follow him. It's more than that. When you own a firm, it's you gotta first of all, you gotta lead by example. You've got to do the things that you want other people to do, but at the same time, you've got to expect what you inspect. So you can't just hide from things. A lot of leaders hide from problems and don't hit them head on. One thing I've learned over the years, so I used to hide from them. I was just like, oh well, that'll get better. If I don't set the standard now of what I expect, then people will just run over you because if they don't know what the standard is, they're not going to try to meet it. And if they don't want to meet the standard, then they can just leave. And I think one thing I've learned in addition to that is hire slow, fire fast. I never used to fire people fast enough. And nobody wants to fire anybody, but if you leave people around and they fester, the culture gets so bad. And so the fact that I got rid of all those people from the ops director, because they were just creating the culture was just getting horrible. It was over time, I didn't even want to come to the office. And so I got rid of all those people and I built this new culture of people that know what to expect when they come to the office, know what I expect when they come in the office. I train them. I make sure that they're fully trained. And if they cause problems, if they don't meet the core values that I've set, then they just go and we get rid of them fast. And that keeps that culture intact. Because if you have one person in there that is destroying your culture, everybody else is going to come in and destroy the culture at the same time. So it's just like it's like an avalanche.
What's next? What's next for the firm, Craig? What are you looking forward to? Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Yeah. So we just signed a lease on a San Marcos office. So if you don't know where San Marcos, Texas is, it's in between Austin and San Antonio. It's the third largest college in Texas. And so what we just realized is we do a really good job of college students in College Station, Texas. And so we were like, what's another place we could go to grow that's similar? And Texas State is in San Marcos. So that's our next venture. And we'll be opening that office June 1st. Trying to hire an attorney right now for that. So now we'll have offices College Station, Waco, and San Marcos. So we're very excited about that, but I'm spending a lot of time on it, keeping me up at night.
I know you shared that your mission is winning where it matters in the courtroom and in life. What does that mean to you? Like, how do you define success?
I've got a client that lives in my neighborhood now that I represented 15 years ago, I believe. Yeah, it was about 15 years ago. And he was selling drugs in college. And luckily enough, I got him out of it. We won an issue, a motion to suppress, and the case got dismissed. And I'll never forget when he moved into my neighborhood 10 years later, he said, look, I want to thank you for this house that I got. And I said, well, why are you thanking me? You did the work the last 10 years to get this house. And he said, well, I wouldn't have this house if it wasn't for you. And that's what it's all about. And that's why we talk about the winning in life. We got to set our clients up for future success. And that can be drug treatment. It can be life coaches. It can be counseling. It can be anything. And I have to have those hard conversations with my clients. Hey, you're addicted to drugs. We got to get you off of it. You're an alcoholic. We got to get you off of the alcohol. We have those discussions. Like, let's get healthy. Let's try to have a good future. A lot of my college student kids, their parents are enablers. They've enabled them so their whole life. They told them they're the best and that they can't do anything wrong. And then when they do something wrong, the parents don't know how to handle it. And so a lot of times I have to come in there and you call lawyers counselors when we are counselors. And I have to counsel them and help them. And sometimes that means let's go play golf together or let's have a conversation. That's why I really like representing college students, because sometimes I can help them because they didn't have the guidance. I can help them get on the right path.
What's a typical day in the life look like now, even outside of the practice of law?
I'm working out now. I've lost 25 pounds. Thanks to you, inspired me actually, because you gave this little talk to us. It really inspired me to get my health back on track. But I get up in the morning, 5 a.m., get a little light therapy, I'm not going bald anymore because I got the red light going on the head. I get up, I work out. I got a longevity trainer in Austin that kind of does all this longevity training with me and the supplements and things like that. But just get my diet right. And I feel so much better. I have a lot more energy and the suits are fitting now. This suit didn't fit me 6 months ago. So just excited about that because, you can become a better leader, a better lawyer, a better entrepreneur if you're healthy and you have the energy. And my days used to just fade off about noon. Now 7 o'clock's about the time I start trying to wind down.
Well, Craig, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you?
I think being a game changer is try to have an impact on people. As a criminal defense lawyer, have an impact on people that it's going to last forever. Just like I told that story about the guy that said, I got the house because of you. I'm living in the neighborhood with you because of you. I think that those are the things that as a criminal defense lawyer are game changing and just living by the motto of being a warrior with empathy. If you can be a warrior with empathy as a criminal defense lawyer, you're going to change the world.
Craig's story is a masterclass in standing your ground, and our final guest is focused on the next frontier. To close out this episode, we're joined by Jami Oliver, founder of Oliver Law Office in Columbus, Ohio. Jami has successfully scaled her boutique law firm by leaning into cutting-edge AI and standardized systems to ensure that quality remains at the core of her firm's growth. I began our conversation by asking Jami what was harder, starting her firm or scaling it.
I went out on my own, I would say 25, 26 years ago. So it's been a long time. And I was always of the mindset that smaller is better. I had just sort of resigned myself to being a solo attorney, keep your overhead low kind of thing. And I did that for a long time and I did it pretty well. And then during COVID, I had, I think, maybe one or two part-time employees I was trying to keep employed. And I thought, I can't keep going like this. This is ridiculous. Like, what's happening to the world? Either stay small, Jami, make as much money as you can, sock it away, and then retire, or build something that will last, sort of like that, The idea of contemplating your life during COVID, I think that happened to me and to my firm. And so that's sort of when I started this SBA program, Small Business Administration, got a master's in business. And it was shortly after that that I joined CRISP and sort of continued the things that I learned during that program because I was like amazed at what I didn't know as a lawyer. And then the business part of running a law firm became almost as interesting to me as being a trial lawyer. And so now we've grown quadrupled, maybe probably more than quadrupled in the last 4 years. So that's sort of the long-winded story of how I got here.
What would you describe, like if you were talking about the culture of the firm, how would you describe that?
I would say the culture of the firm right now is one of support, supporting each other, all sort of being on the same page, working towards the same goal, which is, I can't always say it was always like that, but I really feel that now.
I'm curious, it's just over the last several years, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced and how did you overcome them? Just really kind of how have you evolved as a leader?
Yeah, I would say to get down to the nitty gritty of it, HR. H is people, like working with people. Everybody's got a different personality. I mean, you hear this all the time. Different strengths. People learn differently. You've heard people say, you hire for personality. You can teach skills, hire for personality. What I found is I had to sort of balance all of that and figure out a formula that worked for me and for my firm. And for me, it was I've got to find the people that are bought into what we're doing. And as soon as I could find those people, then I secondarily looked for the skills. But HR has been the biggest challenge for us, finding really good, as Chris would call them, A players, right? That's been the biggest challenge.
You're not alone in that. I'm curious as to what do you look for just for your firm specifically? Like what constitutes like an A player for you?
An A player to us right now is somebody who wants to jump in and learn and wants to jump in and help other people. And that's really hard to screen for. Because some people have it down, like they know what to say during an interview process. It's almost innate, if you will. It's either have it or you don't have it. The people that want to win, right? As opposed to always being right. We don't need you to be right. We want you to want to win and be part of a winning team. Really hard to find.
What does the hiring process look like right now?
The hiring process, it takes about 6 months to get hired, and that's up from a day. I used to just say, "I need somebody in this position. Whoever applies gets the position." But now it's like this complicated, hiring funnel. Sometimes we'll use, an outside resource to do that. But if we're doing it in-house, like, we literally have an Excel spreadsheet and a funnel. And I have people that are helping me. Basically, to get an interview with me, you've got to be all the way through this funnel. Like everybody else has to have screened you. And that's working finally, I would say finally for us.
Now, some people hearing that, they would argue and they'd say, well, that's why it's so difficult for you to hire, Jamie, because it's so difficult to get a role in your firm, right? What would you say to that? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to your perspective, because
Yeah.
like you said, it used to be a day.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem with it being a day is that it was hit or miss. And most of the time it was miss. And it costs so much money to onboard and train somebody and then let them go or have them quit. It's not worth it. I would rather hire very intentionally and have them be an amazing fit and stay with me for years. And then they bring in other employees. And we're seeing that happen right now. I just had somebody start the other day who worked with one of my current paralegals, and she so far is amazing. So yeah, I would argue that if you're just going to plop people down in seats, you're going to get what you ask for.
I think it's also something you do really well, just in terms of really positioning the firm and how you differentiate yourself from other firms in Ohio, like other litigation firms. If you could speak to that, just kind of like what's the unique value proposition of the firm? What do you do differently from other firms?
I get this question all the time, and I feel like sometimes my answer changes a little bit, but I think obviously personal injury is very competitive. And so we struggle with that, especially here in Columbus, but I think everywhere. I think what differentiates us is our ability to maintain the quality. It's sort of like quality control. And we do that with our SOPs and all of our procedures and operating manuals and things so that everybody's doing things the same way and everybody has the same sort of goal in mind, which is the client experience and the client satisfaction. We want 100% Google reviews. We want 100% five-star Google reviews every time a client leaves the office. And so if we can maintain across all employees, whether it's 5 or 10 or 20 or 50, if everybody can maintain that same standard of practice and business, the level of business we're offering our customers, then we can scale and we can still get those five-star reviews. And then they start accumulating, right? As they start accumulating, then your rankings, your SEO, and all that continues to rise. So I would say that's sort of our value proposition is our ability to have standard operating procedures so that we're all offering the same amazing level of service to our clients.
And it sounds like the growth rate, things have been, growing year over year from, last year was a great year. Like I think you're projecting to grow even beyond that, at least by 50% this year. From a case acquisition standpoint, if you could speak to like, what are some of the things you're doing on the marketing front?
The marketing is a constant challenge, obviously, because of the competition and the personal injury. We're sort of refocusing now on wrongful death cases, which is something I love and have been doing for a long time, and having so much experience, in my personal life with losing people and tragedy and that sort of thing. I know how to handle a wrongful death case and I know how to communicate with families. And so I think we're really good at that. So we're starting to rebrand or refocus towards wrongful death. It's a challenge because it's still competitive, but it's almost like an immersive process. I mean, it's intentional. So I don't mean to say I'm throwing money at every possible advertising avenue, right? Because you get bombarded with that, but very intentional, making sure your website's up to date, making sure all your pages are geared, make sure you have the best SEO people. And it's a challenge finding really good SEO companies, right? Because they're not all the same. Some of them don't even know how to do a service industry. I think for 2026, 2027, 2028, for the years coming up, we're really going to focus on the wrongful death. And we're really going to focus on finding the best SEO, and they call it AEO now. I don't know what the formal term is for AI searches, but I had this conversation with our marketing folks the other day, and I said, "Listen, this is what I want. I want you to focus on AI." And they're kind of staring at me blindly in the Zoom screen, like, "Oh, AI again? Do we have to talk about this?" Yeah, we have to talk about this. Half of my clients are searching AI now, so I need to be ranked.
And actually, on that note, if you could share, like, what are some of the ways in which you are leveraging AI in the firm? I know you're big on, like you mentioned, like on the operations side, but what are some of the AI use cases that you've been using internally?
We have an internal software program that's a closed system that we use for anything from drafting interrogatories to answering interrogatories to reviewing medical records, reviewing medical bills. I mean, even our medical records people like literally use the system to search for things that are missing. So that we no longer have to sit for hours and scour medical records to find out if there's a radiology bill missing or an MRI treatment missing. So we use a system right now called Eve Legal. I mean, I'm not promoting them at all. I'm not a paid promoter for them. We're looking at adding anytime AI right now. And honestly, if you're not using it, I was telling somebody this yesterday. If you're not using it, you're going to go out of business. You're not going to make it. Right now, our demand letters go out in 24 hours. Who can say that? I mean, it takes an hour now to write a demand package using one of these closed systems, and they're accurate. Everyone's afraid they're not accurate, but it's what you put in is what you get out. So if you're not prompting it right, you're going to get crap out. But we're constantly like bringing in speakers and trying to bring in trainers and doing our Thursday lunch and learns to try to help our employees and our team members learn how to prompt and learn how to use AI without being afraid of it.
And you seem pretty bought in. Was that always the case as it relates to AI? And like, where do you see this stuff going?
No, I really wasn't always bought in. It was a slow progression. Once I realized, I talked to the team members who were using, because I don't write the demands anymore, right? That's not where my time is spent. But when I started looking at them and they were all uniform, I mean, they all looked like I want them to look. So I started talking to the folks that do that, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that took me an hour, or that took me 20 minutes." And then I got into it and I was like, holy cow, interrogatories are coming out in 20 minutes with my objections in them. So it was a slow progression because I got to tell you, I get emails from my clients now that say, "Hey, I want to tell you how to negotiate because Claude tells me my case is worth X, Y, and Z, and so you need to do this and this." And that's a whole nother ball of wax. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. And so I still have my concerns about AI, and I still watch people get in trouble for, using a system that hallucinates a case, right? You see lawyers get in trouble for that still, not just one, it's multiple lawyers. But this system that we use is closed, and we do not use it to cite case law.
So I know we talked a little bit about some of the marketing, but one of the big pieces I know that's very important to you and you've done a lot is on the community side. What does community outreach look like for you and what are some of the things you're doing now?
Community outreach is really, really important to us, to me personally, and I think my team would agree with that. We still do Purple Stride every year, which is the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, their annual fundraising walk. I lost my mom, lost my uncle, lost my sister just a few years ago, and is we still do that every year. The entire team shows up. It's 100% involvement. I expect it will be coming up here in April again. The other thing we like to do is, we have a quarterly, we call it all hands, but we have a monthly all hands, but every quarter we talk about charity and community involvement. I showed up at a Westerville Public Library a few months ago and did a talk after everybody read a book, right? And we talked about how does the book compare to real practice of law, trial law, judges, courts. So it's those kind of things that we try to encourage people to do, but we're open to all ideas. I mean, we're talking about backpacks for kids. We're talking about working with traumatic brain injuries. We're talking about working on support for people who've lost loved ones in crashes. And it's constantly developing. But our focus is making sure that we're giving back because we don't exist. We don't exist without the community, without Columbus. And it's really important that we give back to them. Otherwise, I'm at the age where I don't understand what my purpose is unless I'm giving back.
From your experience, and you won an Excellence in Community Impact Award at the Game Changers Summit. So you obviously know a thing or two about community impact. What mistakes do you feel some firms make when they're trying to give back, right? Like where do they go wrong?
It's not having people bought in. If nobody's interested, nobody understands what the mission is, they're not going to buy in. Everybody's busy, right? Why would you want to go to a walk on a Saturday afternoon? What does it mean to me? There has to be a conversation about that. It's just like having people bought into KPIs or SOPs. You can't just expect people to drop their lives and want to jump on board to your charity of choice, right? I get the same thing. I get requests all the time. If I want to help everybody, but I can't help everybody. So the things that mean something to me are the things you're going to get a response from me on. And I do the same with my team. I'm like, this is probably the last time we're going to do a Purple Stride walk because I want the team to pick something that they are invested in, not just Jamie, the boss, right? What are you all invested in? So I think that's the biggest thing, Michael, is getting the team invested, which means giving them a say.
I agree. I know a lot of firms, they focus on community impact because the aim is, they'd say, well, it's a good thing to have, right? And ultimately I want to be able to get cases from it, right? If I'm active in the community and we look good. From a business standpoint, how have you seen cases come as a result of the community events that you've done? And if so, like what was kind of the time frame over which that happened?
Right. Well, and I say this to the lawyers that work in the firm, networking is networking. Networking is it's a long-term play. It's not going to happen overnight. It's 10, 20, 30 years of building relationships. So you have to just keep getting out there. Of course, the folks that I walk with at Purple Stride and raise money with, of course, they're going to refer cases to me because I've been doing it for so long and they know me and they know what I do. I just think it's really important that folks understand that the goal is not to get the case from the networking experience. The goal is to build the relationship. And if the case comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you build a relationship. I think that's really important.
Today, like in the firm, what would you say is like the biggest challenge going forward? I mean, I know you mentioned this, obviously people, but anything else, any barrier to growth?
Keeping on top of the technology, it's constant. I mean, I've got calls this afternoon. I've got calls tomorrow interviewing tech companies and apps, trying to figure out what I need to add. That's a big, big challenge, but it's also financial. I think cases have become incredibly expensive in our business. Anything that's plaintiff related, probably on the other side also, but experts are expensive. Just the cost of running the business keeps going up and up and up. The normal things, salaries, health insurance, but technology, the expensive technology and experts. So I think making sure the budgets are and forecasting are correct, which requires data, and the data requires time and technology. So I think I just keep going back to technology is making sure you've got the best of the best, and you can get the data and keep keep your income ahead of your expenses.
I think it's interesting just in you describing like just having all these conversations with various tech companies and just the AI enablement taking place at the firm. I would argue that most law firms are not spending their time that way. And I know it's causing you a bit of paranoia, but from your perspective, those that aren't paying attention to this stuff, what would you say to them?
Well, it's two parts of me. The competitive Jamie's like, continue to ignore it. You're okay. I'll take your cases when you don't have any left. I care about people. I care about my colleagues, and I would say you start somewhere. Start small. Start with an affordable AI software that will at least do your demand letters for you. At least review your medical records and write your demands. That will cut your paralegal time in half, maybe more than half. And if you're not doing that, people like me are going to do it, and just going to keep we're gonna be able to take more and more cases. I'm not really a volume type firm. I'm more of a smaller boutique, we're very selective, but with technology, I can take more cases. And we're texting our clients into our software every single day, all day long. I can touch 100 clients a day. My paralegal can touch 100. In the old days, we couldn't do that.
How would you describe, I guess, day in the life for you today versus maybe even 5 years ago? Like what's changed?
I would say 5 years ago, I would have been wasting my time calling back clients, playing phone tag with clients, talking through property damage issues, interviewing potential clients, looking at potential cases. Our intake system is so streamlined that I don't even know what's happening over there most of the time. But when I spot check it, it's all happening, right? Hundreds of leads a month, hundreds. I only see the ones that qualify, and I see them after they're signed up. So I would say I spent a lot of time doing what my intake folks are doing and what my paralegals are doing right now. And now I get to run the business, and I still get to try cases.
Which side do you enjoy more?
Honestly, I like the business. I do like running the business because I think I've spent 30 years trying cases and got pretty good at it. And not that I don't have some big ones in me, because I know I do. I've got a couple, but learning this business stuff, it's just reminded me how much love to learn and how much I still have to learn.
I love that. What about outside of the firm? How has life changed, right? Just like in terms of family, like basically from when you started the firm to today.
Well, I will tell you, last year, 2025, I took more vacations with my 2 adult kids than our family has ever taken in all the years that I was raising those girls. So we took a vacation a quarter last year. That has never happened. Matter of fact, there were years where we didn't take a vacation at all. No spring break. Part of it's sports and things with the kids, but I couldn't get away. It was me answering the phone. My clients had my personal cell phone. When I think about that now, it blows my mind.
What were the biggest things? I mean, just for somebody listening, let's say they're in that, before scenario, like what are the biggest shifts that they can make to kind of move to where you are today?
Yeah, I would update my software. If you update your software, no one has to have your personal cell again, ever again. And that will free you up evenings and weekends, trust me. You'll still get the messages. You can still respond to, a big case. No one wants to miss the big case. You'll still see it, or a client that could go off the rails if you don't respond. But for the most part, most of that stuff you get that interrupts your personal life, you don't need to think about it till Monday.
And looking ahead, because I want to kind of come back to present day and really look to the future. What's next for the firm? Like, what gets you excited? Is there anything that scares you? I mean, what does the future of the firm look like?
Everything's scary and exciting all at the same time. Sometimes I feel like my personality is split. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to worry about this. But then the other part of me is like, Jamie, my gosh, look at your success journal. Look at all the things you've done in the last 5 years. You are on a course. There's no destination, right? I'm never going to get to the point where I am where I want to be. I'm just going to keep moving the goalposts because that's my personality. But I think the thing that excites me the most is adding the team members that make it fun to go to work, that just make you feel like you're successful, make you feel like your firm is the best of the best, right? Like you built this, like and these people came to work at this firm because out of respect for you and what you've built, and they want to take it over. I don't want to work in this forever. I want to retire someday. I want to write books. I want to educate, I want to speak, I want to do all those fun things everyone talks about. And I need to have that team ready to take over, and they know it. So I slowly start handing responsibilities off to folks that I know can handle it. Like, let's learn how to do a closing statement. Let's learn how to disperse, right? Or let's learn how to handle vendors, our operations folks. I don't need to talk to every vendor. Let's teach you how to do that. So a lot of my time right now is spent teaching, but it's also like my biggest like excitement for the future is I saw today my operations person had a call I didn't even know about with a potential vendor. I had no knowledge of it, and it made me so happy. Because that's only going to snowball, and eventually I'll be able to step back and and sort of pass the reins.
Jamie, I'm curious, how do you define success? I know you mentioned it a few times. I'm just curious, what does that mean to you?
That's hard to define. I would say success is happiness. If I can be happy, relatively happy day to day, nobody's happy all the time, but I can look at my life and where I am, right? Like if I died today, knock on wood, right? I would be happy because I'm happy with what I've done and the effort I've put into everything and the way I've treated people. So I think it comes down to happiness. Happiness to me is success, regardless of what happens to this business.
And then as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you?
Being a game changer to me means learning as much as you can learn, implementing it, and then sitting back and watching the results.
I want to give a huge thank you to Steven, Kayla, Michael, Craig, and Jamie for taking the time to join us on this episode of the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.